What's up, everybody? Welcome to a brand new episode of the 5280 podcast on the MHRT Network. I'm your host, Mundungus Creevy. As always, alongside my co-host, Cameron Parker Pooh and Glenn. I wish we had Dan Quinn Hauser. How's it going, gentlemen?
I don't know if that part's true.
Any of that's true.
Yeah,
it's all true. So obviously we have some things to go over. It was once again not a pretty game. But there are two things I want to get to before we start talking Broncos, because I mean, push off the sad stuff until as long as possible. Tua Tagovailoa took a nasty hit. Looks like he got another concussion. Is in concussion protocol and is now on injured reserve. But from what was reported by, I believe it was Ian Rappaport, he is going along with all the concussion protocol. He is talking with doctors. He is talking with concussion specialists so that he can get back on the field. And I'm sorry, like I know that starting as a little kid, like he played football and football's ingrained in him, but at some point you gotta realize, like, okay, there could be some serious problems down the road. It's time to step away.
Yeah. And I think that, this was maybe a first step. Whether or not he, retires, that is fully up to him and his family for him to be making that decision. And it at the end of the day, it is a hard decision, because like you mentioned, football's in his blood. I mean, it's in everybody's blood. I mean, take the cushions out of it. Just simply retiring from the game is one of the hardest decisions anyone will ever go through. And so it's going to be a hard decision, and he will end up, looking at himself in the mirror and, figuring out what is best. And I think, that sadly, I should say not even sadly, but fortunately, I think that is the right thing to do, because you do have to think about yourself, and your health most importantly. And I think that the best thing for him to do is really, ponder that retirement, because like that was such a scary moment, for him the first go around, with how scary that was. And then to have this happen again, where it may not have been like as overly bad as that last one, but you could still see some signs where there were some after effects from that concussion that just made it super scary. So he definitely has some strong considering. I thought that the Dolphins putting him on injured reserve was the right course of action for him to maybe kind of jumpstart that process a little bit, about him wanting to play again.
And it's one of those things too, Cam, you mentioned the fencing, and that was the thing that when he had the 2 consecutive weeks and the second week against Cincinnati, and he did lock up like that, and how scary that was. And this hit was not a major collision, and it still resulted in that same sort of the fencing result. And, I think the moment you went on Twitter immediately thereafter, there was just a ton of concern for the guy, because by all accounts, he's just supposed to be this wonderful person, really charismatic. I mean, I'm thankful that he did get signed to a large contract. So he is making a lot of money this year. So he will be set. Maybe it makes the decision a little bit easier. You would be potentially walking away from money. It's one of those where I believe it's if he's not cleared, he collects all, and he has to retire. He collects all of his remaining money. If he is cleared but chooses to retire, he gives up money. So that's the tough part, is the likelihood of the Dolphins not clearing him and eating that full contract is probably going to not be the case. We've seen them do some shady deals in the past, but hopefully everything works out for him. And it's really scary. He's married. He's got 2 young kids, and he's got the rest of his life ahead of him.
Well, and it makes you wonder, like, if Tua doesn't make the decision
Mm-hmm.
that maybe the majority of people agree with, does the NFL step in and be like, "Hey, you're done"? Because once you get a concussion, it's easier to get another one, and the more you get, the easier it is to get another one.
And maybe it's not just the NFL, but maybe this putting him on injured reserve was the sign from the Dolphins. To be like, hey, maybe not saying it, to Tua, but just saying it without saying it, basically like, hey, you really probably want to take a long, hard look at maybe your future, the longevity of your health, and that sort of thing. So, but so maybe it starts with the Dolphins, and if it doesn't get to the Dolphins, then yeah, I do think that the NFL might stand. There won't be any lawsuits or anything, but I think that you'll see the NFL step in and maybe kind of force the issue just a little bit, and because obviously we know that the NFL has been such a big proponent of player safety. It's one of the reasons why you see kickoff rule changes and everything right now. So, and the other thing that I want to address too, and this is the sad and the disgusting part about social media. People that are joking about this on social media need to knock it off. I mean, the guy does have a family, and people that are doing the mocking and the joking and the stuff on social media, like, again, the guy has a family. The guy literally could, have died on the football field because of this. And, thankfully he's on injured reserve and everything. He'll take that time, but for anybody that is joking and making jokes about this, knock it off.
Yeah,
Cam, no,
agreed.
normally I don't disagree with Cam 100%, aside from that last part. But I think this is a league that doesn't really care about player safety. I think they go through the motions. They're pushing for that 18th game. And to me, I don't think there's any chance that they would step in, at least to a point where it would be obvious that they were involved, because it could open them up to their biggest thing is that they don't want to ever have to pay out.
They don't want a lawsuit. Yeah.
And they would actually have to, they could make themselves susceptible to future lawsuits and being responsible for these concussions. Why didn't you step in and stop my husband? And he ended up dying of, at his own hand when he was 40 years old or something along those lines. Right. Yeah. So I just don't think that the league is going to be involved in that decision in any fashion. That's
and there sorry, Cam, there needs to be something like in the next CBA or the next owners meeting vote or something where concussions are now part of a medical clearance. Like if you've had a certain number of concussions, I'm sorry, you're not cleared to play anymore. You didn't pass your physical. Yeah. And then that way it's not the NFL getting involved in a sneaky way to make sure that you don't play. It's up front, like you've had 4 concussions, you're done. You can't play anymore.
Yeah. Well, and I'm just more talking on the surface. Like, so I know I said that it seems like the NFL is making it a precedent that they want to take care, and they're making it a priority that they're trying to take player safety into account. That's all I'm just saying. They're not. Like they're absolutely not. That's all I'm just saying is like I just think on the surface when I'm saying that it seems like they are, but they really aren't. And so that may ultimately force the Dolphins to force their hand to be like, hey, we really need you to consider this like we really need you to, because you're right, Glenn, like you do not want to get it to the point where there's going to be a big lawsuit, with the NFL. Cause like you're talking about a national lawsuit at that point. I think that, with what you mentioned, Mike, about, the concussions and going forward, maybe Tua's severity of these concussions is going to afford them a different look into concussion protocols, right? Yeah. So obviously we're dealing with that right now with John Franklin Myers, right? Like he sustained a concussion, against the Pittsburgh Steelers. It seems like he's 50-50 about playing, on Sunday, not to play spoiler alert, but like, I think that maybe there is an extra protocol thing in there that just checks and balances to make sure that, that he's okay.
Yeah.
And that he's cognitively there.
And maybe it's just like a half step where instead of getting involved, they just require Tua to wear one of those halo, like those padded helmet things from now on. Like the Guardians. You can't play without that now. You have to have it on no matter what.
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah. I like Graham's comment here. Would you consider that idea for different injuries? I
just don't know how you do that.
You know what it would be? I think the only other injury would be some sort of a neck or spinal injury.
Yeah.
Where if someone that would be the only other one, like a knee injury or foot or something like that. I don't think would be something, but I think something that could result in paralysis if the wrong hit. They may incorporate that just to look like they're not just singling out the people with concussions. I don't know. I think the league's going to try to stay as far away from this as possible, to be honest with you.
Yeah, and I think that, this is going to obviously open up another huge can of worms as we're talking about the Guardian caps and everything, but this also could force them to make new football helmets that really reduce the recoil of some of these hits. So one of my parents live, next to a former American League umpire, and he was on the Catchers Association, or he was basically front and center about making a new catcher's mask. And one of the things that they were, doing was, creating a new catcher's mask so that when the ball hits the catcher's mask straight on, it creates this whole recoil effect that it kind of softens, the blow in terms of the impact, so that, it's a far less of an impact when in terms of hitting the head. So maybe it also forces them to continue to look into the mirror of maybe making a much safer helmet, even though the helmet is already a weapon anyway, but making the helmet just a little bit more safer with how the whole recoil works. Especially with how, you do get helmet to helmet hits, how can we be able to, do it so it's a bit more safer on the recoil, so that because of that, you do see far less concussions, you see maybe far less, neck injuries and stuff like that. So, it just has the propensity to open up a lot of can of worms. I feel like if Tua, does not retire right now.
Yeah. I thought there was something in place that made players miss at least 2 weeks, regardless of severity of concussion. I don't think so. No, I don't think so. I think all you have to do is pass the concussion protocol, and then you can play again.
There may be certain levels, and maybe we can do some digging on that, but like levels that you have to pass within the concussion protocol.
It seems the NHL has the strictest concussion protocols for players returning. There's so many hockey players that are out months or more, whereas football players can be out for the remainder of a game. Okay. That was our little talk about Tua. I wish him all the best. Mm-hmm. I hope that he has a fast and safe and proper recovery, I guess would be the best way to say that, so that he can decide what's best for him personally. As a father and a husband, I would, after that many concussions, and I'm assuming the severity of them have been more than like normal. I would not come back as a player, but to each their own. Again, I never played in college, never played in the NFL, so I can't really speak into it. But I hope that whatever he decides is the right decision for him, and I hope that we don't have to have this conversation about him again.
And we'll still root for him. It's not like, he makes this decision and all of a sudden we'll just turn on him, right? Like, no.
But I hope that whatever decision he makes is the right one for him and the right one for his family. But I hope that we don't have to have this conversation again. I don't want him to get hit in the head again.
That's right.
All right. So one of the other things that happened just today or yesterday, I'm not even really sure. Bryce Young of the Panthers gets benched 2 games into the Canellis regime. I don't know if it was.
You can't blame them for benching him. I mean, look at who they have as a backup.
Well, but then the question is, who did that actually come from? Because we know that Tepper likes to stick his nose in where it shouldn't be and makes calls that probably shouldn't be made, which is why they're in the situation that they're in now.
The Andy Dalton era.
Yeah, the Red Rocket. He's
Red
back.
Rocket.
Here we go.
Yeah. Man.
And one of the other reasons I bring that up is because we face the Panthers later on in the season.
Well, I just think that, the unfortunate thing is, like, we're not in those rooms to have these conversations or assumptions, I should say. I would hope the reason for the benching was due to bad play. I would hope.
Well, what I heard was the Panthers are under the belief that the roster got better in the offseason, but Bryce isn't playing any better. And that was the reason behind the benching.
Which, if that's the reason, that's fine. I just think that the unfortunate, even the microscopic view of it, like, of how we're seeing this, or from how I'm seeing, I should say, is just, it feels like you're now punting on this idea of Bryce Young. You know what I mean? And which, I mean, again, like, okay, but like, it's already setting up so much for you in terms of, kicking the can down the road, looking for a new quarterback. And I don't know. There's just so much to unpack with this whole situation where, they already look bad in and of itself with, already basically dealing with the Bears twice, if you will, with Caleb Williams. And then obviously, with that whole trade that went down, and then, shipping DJ Moore off, to Chicago. And it's already looking
Ryan Burns.
Yeah, it's already looking.
They still owe Chicago a second-round pick this coming draft. So it's like that horrendous trade is still not completed in essence.
Yeah. So it's hard to peel it back without, feeling, like you're looking at a completely stupid organization, to be frank. I mean, it's just like, it's such a disgrace right now. And the ownership, I'm seeing some of the comments with Dave Tepper. It's like this same ownership, the longest tenured coach within that building post the Ron Rivera era is Matt Rule, the current coach of Nebraska. So it's just like,
you had to shoehorn that in.
Go Huskers, Buff suck.
I had to. But it goes to show you just how inept and how not loyal at all this ownership group is. Even for Christian McCaffrey, the best thing for Christian McCaffrey was leaving that franchise. The best thing for Brian Burns was leaving that franchise. And get this, they even released their sack leader. Granted, it was 2 weeks. They released their sack leader. I forget his name, but they released the sack leader for like this year, like after 2 weeks. It's just like, what are we doing here? Like, what is actually in the water over there in Carolina that we're making some of these decisions? So it's just like, it's befuddling.
It's the Brian Burns thing also, like you referenced him. I mean, they had an offer for 2 first-round picks from the Rams 2 years ago. They passed on it and then sent him to the Giants. I think it was for a second and a sixth, or second and a fifth.
Yeah.
Something along those lines that was not even remotely representative of what they were previously offered and turned down. I mean, this organization is a disaster. I mean, we things aren't going well for the Broncos right now, but one thing that we do have in our favor is that we have good ownership. I mean, the fact that, like, you call it a Tepper tantrum. This guy is so petty that he bought his old boss's house and knocked it down to build a bigger one because he hated the guy. That what he did when they were building the new training facility in Rock Hill, South Carolina, and then wasn't paying people, and so they stopped, and it ended up just being a complete disaster, and all like $36 million lost. I mean, just the guy is just first class POS, and like, it's, I guarantee you, that he had some say on this, because he thinks in his mind that they should be competing in the NFC South, and there's zero chance that they could win that.
Well, you know,
Payton had offers for Simmons and ended up releasing him. So, but it's not 2 first-round picks.
No.
And now let's listen. I love Justin Simmons.
Yeah.
But look at Justin Simmons with the Falcons versus Justin Simmons with the Broncos.
Well, but still, if you're, I was just going to say though, but if you're offered 2 first-round picks for Justin Simmons, again, I love Justin Simmons. It's really hard to turn a deal like that down. If you're, and to use a comparison, just based on a current story right now with the Denver Broncos and ownership. So I think it was Chris Thomason broke a story today that the Broncos ownership group is doing this thing where they're basically re-inviting a lot of the alumni players and talking about like the benefits and stuff, like, and getting them more involved with the football team. Yeah, that ownership, like, the Broncos ownership, like actually doing good things for former players. You know what I mean? Like, so, you contrast that to the whole situation, with Carolina, and it's just, it is the epitome of a dumpster fire of an organization, a very famous phrase that is used so often on social media, but it is a dumpster fire of an organization.
Yeah. And I know we'll get into the Broncos soon, but Jeff's comment about having a trade offer for Simmons and not getting anything for him, all of a sudden after 2 weeks, you think about that 3rd round pick that was offered for Cortland Sutton, and that sure would have been nice to have in the back pocket in exchange for a complete lack of leadership and heart.
Which is funny because and then obviously there was the Brandon Ayuk thing, right? So like he would have been shipped off to the the 49ers, Steelers. Right? Or the Steelers.
Cortland would end up in San Francisco, and the Steelers would have gotten Ayuk.
Yeah. So,
all right. So let's kick the Broncos stuff off with first. Mike McGlinchey is out for at least 4 weeks or up to 4 weeks.
4 to 6 weeks, probably.
4 to 6. Okay. And I don't mean to sound like an a-hole, but it couldn't have been Bowles. Like, why did it have to be McGlinchey?
Oh my God!
I'm sorry.
For Mike's next impression, Bronco Bill. Yeah.
I just had to throw that out there. But obviously there are some issues with the Broncos. I'm not going to pick on the defense too much. I'm sure we'll talk about it with some mistakes and things, but I'm not that. I'm not upset at all about the defense. I think the defense has been holding their own for the most part. Is about as good as we could have expected. However, the offense. Bo Nix still does not have a passing touchdown. He is 0 touchdowns and 4 picks in 2 games. And a lot of that, and I kind of want to break it down piece by piece. I'm going to put the O-line and the running backs together because the O-line is a reason for the running backs not being able to run. But I kind of want to start there. Like, I feel like one of the biggest issues with the Broncos is the offensive line and the running game.
My heart dropped. I will admittedly tell you, my heart dropped when I actually saw Garrett Bowles and Mike McGlinchey on the field down at the exact same time. And I was just praying that it wasn't, anything bad. And obviously, McGlinchey's out for, about 4 to 8 weeks. But yeah, and it was a depth thing that I noticed, within the preseason, but it was my takeaway when Blake Watson was in the game. You know what I mean? Like I thought that the offensive line did not do any service in terms of run blocking. And as a result, you're seeing some of it take into effect with the running game and vice versa. The running game is non-existent. I mean, you could say Javonte's a disappointment. Well, you could also say that Jaleel, as much as we like Jaleel is as much of a disappointment as Javonte. And, and so, I mean, like, there's just so much to go with. And, and then we'll talk about the other part. Then you get the chance to see Tyler Beatty for one play and he goes for 16 yards or whatever the run was. So it's just like,
16.
there's so much to unpack with the identity of a running game, and then the predictability of the running game. And like every time, Bo Nix was under center was the moment a run play was being called. That cannot happen. And, and it leads into so many other things with, the way that play calls are being run. It seems like things are being far more predictable. I thought we had moved past this whole preseason offense, and we are now looking into the idea that, it seems like we are calling a very preseason offense, a very like vanilla offense right now with training wheels on for a quarterback that is, 24 years old. And, and to be fair, he's not the only one. Like he's not the only one that doesn't have a passing touchdown. Neither of the rookie quarterbacks through 2 weeks of the NFL season don't have a passing touchdown. So just set the record.
Nor Caleb, either one.
Yeah. So to set the record straight on there. So like, it's okay there. It still looks bad that there's no passing touchdown through 2 weeks and everything, but it is an amalgamation of a lot of issues right now on the offensive side of the ball.
Yeah. And go ahead.
I was just going to say, like we're seeing these comments about Sean Payton. And I mean, at one point,
we're getting there. Trust me.
Just the play calling has just been awful. And then he has the nerve to say after the game that, we need to get the running backs involved in this game. It's like, dude, you're calling the plays. Like, it's and this offensive line, the amount of money collectively that, 4 out of 5 of them are pulling in is astronomical in relation to what the general offensive line across the league is making. And it's just completely lackluster. You talk about Peyton saying to the wide receivers in week 1, can you help this kid out? Like, I mean, the same conversation could be had to the running backs and to the offensive line. It's just, it's really disappointing. I mean, I honestly thought that we were going to be 2-0 at this point, and to be 0-2 going into Tampa, where Baker Mayfield is like on fire right now, is scary. I mean, and then we stand a chance of our next home game being 0-4. I mean, it just blows, quite honestly, to be frank.
Yeah, and to be fair, like I'm not picking on every lineman. Like I've liked what I've seen from Quinn Miners. I've liked what I've seen from Wattenberg. Powers has been okay. I'm not saying they're playing great. I'm saying when you compare it to how the tackles have been, because a lot of the runs that we do outside or the screens or anything to the outside just gets shut down so fast. There's pass rush in Bo's face all the time. It's really upsetting with how much we're paying these offensive linemen that this is what we're getting.
Oh, I mean, if there's any talk of extending Garrett Bowles at this point, I mean, that's absolutely just would be a complete travesty. I mean, he's back to his multiple penalties a game ways, and it's just, I mean,
and he was going against a backup.
Yeah,
I know. I don't want to be negative. I don't, we're 2 games into a 17-game season. But the problem is I'm looking forward to what is on the immediate horizon. And we could dig ourselves in such a deep hole if something doesn't break, that the season is completely lost. I mean, I never thought that the 5.5 over under was remotely possible. I thought it was insulting. And when you start looking at what stares us in the face with the mistakes that are being made, all of a sudden I'm like, these people in Vegas look a lot smarter than the rest of us.
Well, and I think that the one thing I will say, I think the one thing that we can say here is, though, they are correctable. Like you can definitely correct those things, but the injury bug is something that is definitely worrisome, especially with McGlinchey going down. With Matt Peart coming in there, you want to make sure that he can be able to hold in there for 4 to 6 weeks, right? What's up, Carter? So you want to make sure that holds up for multiple weeks. But I think for me, the two biggest issues for me is, the running game, but also the lack of playmaking within the wide receiver room. I mean, like, it is everything that we saw from week one basically came back into the home opener with the Pittsburgh Steelers. They do not have an identity right now of who is wide receiver one, who is the yak guy, who is the guy that's going to be able to stretch the field. And, some of that might actually end up being the play calling, but, there is something amiss, and maybe that is, Sean's play calling, which is, basically, the length of a Santa's naughty and nice list, I mean, like, it is very long. I mean, like, but I just think that, and shout out to Patrick Chiotti, friend of the show, and obviously does fantastic work with Let's Talk Broncos. He screen grabbed I believe it was the interception where the ball was snapped and Josh Reynolds and Cortland Sutton, they didn't even move. Everybody else, it felt like, actually moved a muscle. They didn't even move. And so it's just like, that's a problem. When you are basically 5 seconds behind out of the gate on a snap, that will stop and not help a quarterback whatsoever, a young quarterback at all, especially in the red zone, especially coming also from the fact that you had maybe your best play of the game, to Josh Reynolds for the, the trick play which is a great trick play. But, those are very correctable things, but those are very big things in the grand scheme of things about your development and about lack of effort. And that's a scary thing that you want to say, but that's a lack of effort thing, specifically, on plays like that.
And Cam, those two guys that you referenced are veteran players. It's hard to go after Reynolds because he has, like Jeff is referencing, he's stepped forward, and thank goodness that he's on the team because he really has done well. But then you look at like a Marvin Mims. I mean, when they unveiled these new jerseys and they made just a handful of jerseys to sell with numbers and names already on them, Mims and Sutton were two of the players that were on there. I mean, I think there were under probably 5 current players that they made them for. Marvin Mims was in for 9 offensive plays. Like, he was in for less plays than Troy Franklin. Like, this is not like going to plan. I mean, and I said it last week, we were thrilled with this wide receiver room and the depth that we had, and how hard was it to make these cut downs, and who was even going to be not even going to make the practice squad. And so then we let guys like Brandon Johnson go and some other players like Jalen Virgil, things like that. And now we're in this predicament where nobody is performing. And our second round pick from last year is, I would love an explanation. I mean, what really is happening there? It's just bizarre.
Yeah. And I mean, you also had Dulcich in there at tight end with drop problems again. Like, it didn't go away.
Yeah. And I think that the thing that should be great for Bronco fans is the fact that we have yet to mention Bo Nix. Yeah, he struggled. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, he has struggled, and yeah, he is, struggled for 2 weeks. But I think the good news is you actually are starting to see the game kind of slow down for him a little bit from 1 week to the next. And I think even as a whole, if we're going to be somewhat optimistic, right, the 2 games from week to week, they lost by a touchdown or they lost by a 1-possession game. So it is definitely within it's definitely there. You know what I mean? Like, it is definitely there to be had. And I think that the offense will probably get to that point, where it'll start to kind of hit its stride a little bit. And we also have to call to remembrance a little bit that Sean Payton's teams do start slow. You know what I mean? Like, they do start slow. So they don't really start fast. Unfortunately, though, and this goes to, what Glenn and I were talking about a couple weeks ago, but it was just like they needed to start fast. And unfortunately, that's not happening. But maybe there will come a point in time where they do actually, come out of the gate, for a game, and, the offense is looking really well, or really good. And, Bo is distributing the football. But it's just unfortunate that through 2 weeks of a regular season, we're seeing preseason vanilla football with how the offense is being run. Again, Bo Nix's legs aren't being used. And even if it's not being used, he's still leading the team in rushing right now. But that's just based off of a quarterback draw or scrambles because of the amount of pressures that he's been receiving. Which and for Nix, by the way, he's been pressured a bunch, right? And that's one of the things we talked pre-show. He's been pressured a bunch, but he has not been sacked all that much. So if you're going to be praising, if you're going to be praising the kid, facing all that pressure and only be sacked twice, you could actually argue as one be with a phantom sack that TJ Watt had against the Steelers. That's beside the point. But
he touched his shin and he jumped.
But I think nonetheless, I think you are starting to kind of see it slow down for him, just a little bit. And so I think that it would be very nice to see things kind of click and operate a little bit more from the shotgun and less under center.
Yeah. On the bright side, though, if you actually look at the final scores of these games, and they haven't been pretty, and we've scored 26 points, 4 of those from safeties. So, the offense is really averaging 11 points per game. But the point I'm making is we lost by 6 game 1. We lost by 7 game 2. They weren't blowouts. It didn't feel like they were that close. But we're still 1-score games in each of the first 2 games. I don't foresee that being the case in Tampa. But I think if we're trying to take away any positive stats or aspects of the first 2 weeks, the fact that we were still in the game, even after things weren't going our way through our own mistakes, is probably something to note.
Yeah, so might as well get to the 2 most polarizing people in the Broncos organization right now, Bo Nix and Sean Payton. I think Bo Nix is going to be fine. I think that end zone interception he was throwing to Cortland Sutton was a bad throw and a bad decision. When you was it Tim Jenkins? Tim Jenkins broke it down. It was like, there's an open guy there, and there. And you just decided to throw it to Cortland. I get it. He's a rookie. It's going to happen. That's the rookie of rookie plays. It happens. The problem I'm having is that you know that Bo Nix works well in shotgun. Why aren't you having him in up-tempo shotgun for the majority of the game and giving him the best chance to excel?
Yeah, I think that over time that will happen. But I think also, Sean, I don't think it's necessarily his play calls necessarily or at times, but I also think too, as we were referenced earlier, the length of his play calls, he's got to shorten that.
But does he though?
Yeah, he has to, because specifically from the standpoint of if players aren't getting it, or specifically you're seeing a huddle where it's taking about 10 to 15 seconds to get a play in. Those are stuff that get magnified over the course of weeks. So I just think that I think Nix and Peyton will mesh eventually, but I just think that it's going to get to the point where they also have to be able to see the habits that Bo Nix has kind of been performing the last couple of weeks as also growth that's not going to be happening. You know what I mean? I think it specifically, he's throwing off of his back foot at times, that's fine, depending on the read that you make, but those can't happen often. You know what I mean? Quarterbacks that made, throws every once in a while with their back foot, they're great plays, but those can't happen, on a frequent basis. We saw it too much, with Drew Lock and everything, throwing off your back foot, that kind of thing. So, or staring down wide receivers, you know what I mean? That can't happen specifically with guys like Cortland Sutton. And so I think that, you have to be able to see growth from him from that aspect. And I think that it's been gradual with that in terms of staring down wide receivers. It's been gradual. But also he's got to be able to stand in his base too, as I was alluding to with, throwing off his back foot. He's got to be able to stand upright in the pocket, and survey the field. He has to be able to, do what he's been told, from day one, if you will, and that is, process and, really understand the offense. And I think that, he'll get to that point, but Also, I think Payton's got to make sure that he's doing the best thing that he can, which is helping his young quarterback out. And I don't know if he's doing that right now.
Well, I think one of the things missing too is that there's really not a security blanket, and this goes back to the comments about the receivers. There's not somebody that is freeing themselves up, and that when he gets into a spot, he can count on that. I can dump it to this guy, and we're going to gain a couple yards or something. There's just it doesn't exist at this point quite yet. I had seen, I wish I remembered who had actually made the suggestion about it, but like Sean Payton really prides himself on these like ridiculously long play calls. And one of the things that like he wants these guys up at the line of scrimmage very quickly, but he also has these calls that just don't really lend themselves for that to be a possibility in a lot of the time. And you could actually see Bo getting like frustrated, like looking at the sideline, like, get this play in, please. Probably said something a little bit different, but somebody had recommended, why not just have like Peyton can still call those plays, but have it numbered on a wristband, and so now you're not going through these iterations of these long plays coming this way, and then Nick saying the repeating it, blowing through, because when you're walking up to the line of scrimmage with 5 seconds left, there's no mystery as to when that ball is going to be snapped. So it's very easy for these pass rushers to get a jump on the play. So I think there are certain things that maybe that could be incorporated, but he really does need a go-to guy to dump off to or to count on, and from this receiver room. We'll see who it ends up being.
Well, I'm still hoping it's going to be Vele, but we got to wait for him to come back.
Yeah.
What's his status for this week? Any idea? I haven't heard a word about it.
I haven't heard anything with him.
I thought he was out for up to 4.
They just said he was out this week. Or not this week for Tampa, but this last week, I should say. But yeah, I just think that and I'm not saying that Bo Nix has this by any means, but I'm just using this as a frame of reference to what we're talking about with the Broncos playbook. But like, when someone has a learning difference, you go into like a place where they kind of help things, they give you like a book on tape or something, you know what I mean? Like they help so that you may better understand, a book or understand reading something. So I think that, if you're Sean, you got to be able to make sure that, okay, how can I best communicate this to Bo, and, so that he understands it, the players understand it, and, that every single party, and even the offensive line, understands it, right?
So the hooked on phonics version.
If you want to say that, yeah, basically the hooked on phonics version. But I think that would be very beneficial for every single party. And look, I will say this: it's a very so Russell Wilson was a problem. They never meshed. I hate to use this as an example. I'm sorry, but the more things like this linger, like a long play call and everything like this, the more things linger, it might actually add a little bit more credence as to why maybe Russell Wilson was having a bit of some problem as the play clock was winding down, was maybe Sean was giving him some of those long play calls. And that's one of the reasons why, he was getting down to 5, he was getting down to 4, he was getting down to 3, and they had to, snap the football. So I hate to use that in terms of a foreshadow, but just it's something to consider. The more things progress, maybe there's more to that.
Do you think it's something where Sean Payton needs to give up some responsibilities, like play calling or game planning or something along those lines?
The more it continues, the more it continues. Yeah.
Yeah. Go ahead, Cam.
The more it continues, you do start to wonder. After week 2, you're not having that conversation now, but like, talk to me in like week 12, week 13, or something like that. I would be worried if he hasn't given up play calling at that point.
I don't think that ego lends to giving up anything, because that actually then assigns the blame to him.
Yeah.
I mean, Jeff was at the game, and he's saying they were counting down a few times in his section. I mean, that's absolutely mortifying.
Thankfully, it wasn't out over the loudspeakers.
Yeah,
I didn't hear that on the broadcast. Thankfully.
All right, so we've talked offensive line, we've talked running backs, wide receivers, Bo Nix, Sean Payton. Any other positions you want to discuss? Were there any other issues you had in the game, or do we want to just move on to the Tampa Bay game and kind of have a shorter one because I am depressed at 0-2?
At the end of the day, this was a transition year. I have to just continue to say this, and specifically from the offensive side of the ball, this was a transition year, specifically with the idea with a young quarterback. It's really important still that we do take this week by week, with the offense. So I know we said what we said with Sean, with Bo, with the wide receivers, the offensive line. It's a week by week thing. If you were seeing improvement week in and week out, and obviously wins are going to be rolled into that, that's the most important part at the end of the day. And as we said earlier too, if Bo Nix proves to be the guy at the end of the year, that's ultimately the biggest victory of the entire season. They could go 1-17, and if Bo Nix proves to be the guy, that's a huge victory because it means that there's something that you can now build off of, for the future. So I think that we just need to kind of preface that one more time that like if Bo Nix proves that he's going to be the guy week in and week out, that's really
Okay.
that's all that matters.
So let me ask you this question then. We've talked about all the bad things that happened, all the bad looks, all the bad throws, the decision making. What in your mind is giving you hope for Bo Nix in the future? What are you seeing that's making you be okay? He's going to be the guy, I think, for the future.
I think you want to see him process. I mean, I think that you want to.
No, I'm saying, what have you seen?
I think you are starting to see him process a little bit better, though. I think you are starting to kind of see him, take some shots a little bit down the field, when he needs to. And, I mean, there's times where it may not necessarily get there. And I think that comes with, maybe, some more reps or, what have you within, comfortability with, how they're using it. But I think that, the way that they're able to kind of use him within the running game, I think is also helping him, slow things down with an area that he's been comfortable with. And I think that the other part of it too is you do sense, you do sense the frustration. I will admittedly say this. I thought that his snarky answer to the
I threw the ball to the other team.
Was actually perfect. I mean, I absolutely loved it. Drop back, threw it to the other team. I mean, like, and I think that to his credit, I think actually in that press conference, someone actually asked it even before that or something. Like someone actually already asked it before or something. But still, like, what more do you want him to say? You know what I mean? So I just think that, if you so I just think that if we're going to continue to see that development and the processing and, because again, like, I think the yardage is starting to get.
Hello, Joseph.
You know what I mean? Like the yardage is starting to kind of get there a little bit with Bo, but I think it's starting to kind of slow down just ever so steady. And I think it'll be, I think it'll be better week by week, but he's still got to show the improvement, passing touchdowns, et cetera, because that's something that, the media likes to, latch onto. By the way, Joey was on with David Talks Buffs, so make sure you go check out the show that he did with David.
Yeah, I'm not going to do that. They're talking about the Buffs. Why would I want to hear about any of that?
Hey, what about Cam Talks Huskers?
We win. They don't. So I don't know why we'd want to talk Buffs.
So, Mike, I'm going to turn your question around a little bit in the fact that what I'm not seeing listen, it's easy to pick apart right now because things aren't going our way. And he has made 4 interceptions. One of them was late in the game. It was, kind of a throw. That the one in the end zone was devastating.
Yeah.
In turning your question around, what I'm not seeing is I'm not seeing anything that gives me like, holy shit, this guy's not the guy. right? So like I'm not feeling despair over the pick. I think there's a lot of good qualities. I think he's got a great arm. I think he's got great leadership out there. I liked when he got frustrated about the call not going well.
Yeah.
Or coming in fast enough. I like the fact that the guy can run over 20 miles an hour when he needs to. That his history of I know that would be the only benefit to the season going down the drain is Travis Hunter.
No,
sure.
No.
But the greatest player in college football?
No.
Right now?
Pass.
Is it that single white female weirdo Dylan Raiola? Like what?
I'll take he's a freshman. He can't even be drafted.
Honestly, guys, like that's ridiculous.
Okay, but to be fair, who cares what he looks like? Why does it matter?
Because he's doing the same jumps and the arm motion. Like it's it's weird, Mike. It's strange. Okay.
Listen.
Really
when I was 15 in high school, I got a perm so that I could look like Justin Timberlake. So you shut your mouth. I get it. He's 19 years old. He's got the same trainer. He trains with Mahomes. Like, what do you think he's going to act like? Who cares?
So who's going to? So is the next? Is Victor Wembanyama going to go grow a beard, get hair plugs, and go up to the talcum and go? And throw it up in the air, like,
who cares?
Wearing a 23 jersey, like give me.
If he wants to, who cares?
It's just bizarre, dude. Yeah, exactly.
You say that, but your quarterback walked out with 3 minutes left in the game because he's a quitter. So you shut your mouth.
But
what was I saying?
But for Travis Hunter, like I wouldn't hate it. I mean, the guy is a superstar. I mean, he's an elite player at corner. He's an elite player at wide receiver. I think he's better at wide receiver. Yeah, I wouldn't hate it one bit.
Like Mike's about to
continue. Hard pass on my end. Go ahead.
It's because he's a buff that you're just turned off by Travis Hunter. It's fine. Just know that he's a tremendous.
It's just like, he is a great player, right? But he's not the best at wide receiver or corner. He's up there, but he's not the best at either.
That's
like
what
he's not going to play both ways in the NFL. He's not.
I mean, sure, but I just think that we still have to at least evaluate it in the sense that there's at least a possibility it could happen. All it takes is one team. All it takes is one team. And again, like even if he's not the best, wide receiver, in the class, or he's not the best cornerback in the class, like you're still talking about him within the breadth of being one of the best. And so
he's going to go to Carolina anyway. So why does it matter?
No, he's not. I actually think that,
number one pick.
No, he's not. I actually think that he's going to be pulling an Eli, and he wouldn't want to go to Carolina. I really.
But and I know it's way too early to talk draft, but I am under the impression that Denver would go tackle.
I don't know.
As a first round pick. That would be my assumption. But again, way too early to talk about that.
Yeah.
They did. Yeah. Jeff brought up Peyton Manning's rookie numbers. I mean, look at John Elway's rookie numbers. Like both were not great. And Elway got benched.
Yeah.
So his first game. He lined up behind the guard, even. So
there you go. Munungus has me thinking I can just from the free throw line like Jordan. Do it. Dunk it.
Notice how I'm not saying anything.
It's just like listen, if you want to criticize the guy's play, I get it. But criticize him because he's like Mahomes, who cares? What does that have to do with anything?
No, but it's the impersonating. It's the mannerisms. It's like copying the guy, like his whole identity. It's just, but you don't find anything weird about that?
So
and even if I did, who cares? What does it have to do? Like, I'm not related to him. I don't talk to him on a personal basis. Like, who cares?
The thing for it with me is, as Mike said, he's been training with, Mahomes. He's been training with him. But when you train with him for multiple years and Mahomes, you pick up different traits. You picked up
the jump in the end zone and the headband with the
No,
It's bizarre, guys.
you pick up different skill sets, and specifically the hairstyle. That's one of the biggest things that people have been clamoring on, the hairstyle. It's something that he's had since he's been in 6th grade. So anybody that wants to, jump on that, like he's had that hairstyle since he's been in the 6th grade. He wears 15, not for Patrick Mahomes. He wears 15 for Tim Tebow. Why
don't I get a suit and some sunglasses and I can pretend I'm Pitbull and like be
Do it.
I'm Mr. Worldwide. Like, come on. It's weird.
I
don't get it. Like all this hate for Raiola, but like, where's the hate for Shador looking just like his daddy? Like Shador acts just like his dad. Let's criticize him. Like, why are you acting just like Dion?
Okay. I'm not
looks
seeing
just like him, acts just like him. Come on.
He looks just like him. Okay. I mean, okay. This is going nowhere.
I'm just saying.
Anyway, let's get back to Broncos.
Yeah, we'll try. Let's see. Oh, it was a different era. Yeah, that's true. Denver hasn't drafted an offensive tackle in years. Why start now? When was the last one? Clady?
Bowles.
2017.
Yeah, but he sucks. So I'm a good one.
I mean, literally, they have not drafted a tackle since Bowles. 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th round. They've not drafted a tackle.
Thank you, Joey.
We love you, Joey.
Feeling the love.
All right, so let's talk Broncos Bucks. Again, like I initially had said that Denver was going to go like 11-6. I'm not thinking that anymore. I'm thinking like 4, like 4 and 13.
Completely off the cliff.
Yeah. But with how, and it's weird because we were talking about how easy it was going to be for the Falcons to win the NFC South because the NFC South is so weak. But the only weak team in the NFC South is the Panthers.
Yeah.
Like Atlanta's looking good. Tampa Bay is looking good. Good Lord, where'd the Saints come from? So I'm not putting the Broncos winning this game against the Bucks at all. Like I've got nothing. It's going to be like 6-47.
Like I hate to say it, but I think they're going to be my knockout pool pick this week. I mean, unfortunately, I mean, hats off to Baker Mayfield. I love that guy. So I'm psyched to see that he found a spot that appreciates him, and he's thriving because
he got out of Carolina.
He got out of Cleveland. I mean, what you think they're second guessing that decision?
There's a lot of things that they're second guessing, I'm sure.
Well, I mean that decision led to the worst decision in perhaps the worst contract in NFL history.
That's the worst trade ever, Deshaun Watson. That worst trade ever.
They made the trade after they knew all the allegations.
Yeah.
And it gave him like all that guaranteed money. I mean, it's just bizarre. But just going back to the Baker situation, I mean, this is a guy that played hurt and he didn't do well. And then they dumped him because he didn't do well, overlooking completely the fact that he gave his all to that team and he played injured to try to help them win.
Yeah.
And it backfired on him. And so thankfully, that's why I'm happy that he's in a good situation. But Flying Dragon Films mentions the Bucks wide receivers. They are just sick. And it's, and if our defense is having to be on the field as often as they have been in the first 2 weeks because the offense is not, is a 3 and out, is a 4 play, it's a 5 play. It's just not enough time for these guys to rest. Our defense has played really, really well, and in this time, but you can't expect it to be sustainable when you're not, evening out that time of possession a little bit better.
Yeah. I mean, and again, for me, it's like to preface it, I've been this whole like week by week type person. I mean, obviously we gave a record prediction, before the season. But I mean, like the wide receiver room with the Bucs is going to be a problem. It's going to be a problem with that secondary. I think the secondary has gotten better. For one, the play of Riley Moss has been really good to see. I will say that the play of Riley has been a really good bright spot. I mean, he got picked on by the referees, it felt like, but I mean, like, it was, he was really holding his own. And obviously, the play to Tyler Lockett, that was like a game of inches type of play, like you can't knock him for that. And so, I mean, like, he's played great. I think Levi Wallace has actually played a pretty good too. So the secondary has done a pretty decent job. And I thought that Brandon Jones has actually done a pretty decent job of, showing up and helping out in the run game as well too. So I think the wide receiver room and against our secondary is going to be one of the keys to the game. Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, Trey Palmer, they got another guy, another wide receiver, in there. Bucky Irving, it seems like he's emerged a little bit too within that running back room along with Rashad White. So, I mean, yeah, they, and also too, like, their offensive line is a bit underrated. I mean, like, you got maybe one of the best tackles in the game in Tristan Wirfs. So, like, the Broncos, up front are going to have to be, a bit, bit on their P's and Q's. And I think that, one thing that Baker, at least it feels like, even within his history, is that he does feel like he gets sacked a lot. So if you're able to get a lot, some pressure on him and create some, some unnecessary throws because he's a bit aggressive, you might be able to also get some more, get some turnovers, maybe, get some more interceptions. And so, flip field position, which if there's one area where you probably could help that game would be the, flipping field position and winning the field position battle. So, but it's going to be a long game. The one thing on the defensive line side of things for Tampa is I don't think Elijah Cansey is going to be there, and I don't think Vita Vea is going to be there. So those are obviously two big losses for the defensive line. So if you want to try and commit to a running game, you might be able to at least have some success. What's the definition of success for a running game this year? I guess we're about to find out, but it would be nice for them to commit the running game with those two guys out.
Flying Dragons wants to know if we like the idea of staying back on the East Coast to prepare for the game. Do we play the Jets in New York? Okay, so I'm assuming that's what he means, is between Tampa Bay and the Jets. Do we stay on the East Coast?
Maybe. We are staying on the East Coast. They are staying.
Okay, so we're not coming back to Denver?
No.
Okay.
So, I mean, listen, private plane, all the amenities.
What's that?
No, but my point is I don't know if it's that big a deal, like to fly back to Denver after a game in Florida. I mean, really, what are you looking at? Because you're not going to Midway and having a layover. It's teach their own. If Peyton's just trying to change up the scenery a little bit, go with it. Yeah. He used to like to stay at the Greenbrier in West Virginia when he was with the Saints, when they had some games that, be 2 weeks in a row. But we'll see. I'm not sure where they're going to be. So.
Glad you're going to the Jets Broncos game.
No, unfortunately not. It's not a far drive either. It's only about 3.5 hours.
So, dude, question. I've always wondered why a West Coast team playing East shouldn't be forced to kick at 4. I don't know.
No, but that's actually a good point. If it kind of forces the guys, those teams to fly out on Friday versus Saturday. If they have a 1:00 start, I mean, that's a 10:00. If you're, your bodies are used to a 10 a.m. start. That was one of the fun things actually about. I was in California last year during football season, and the first games kicking off at 10 a.m. was pretty freaking cool.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
The good news, at least, about an 11:00 game is the moment you're done, you have the entire day or after that to just kind of just veg out, win or lose.
So for me, the last 2 weeks, I've picked the Broncos to win both. So I'm going to flip it and see if maybe that changes our luck. So I'm going to say that the Bucs win 38-12.
Wow.
12.
And
We're
see if that switches the karma any.
We're going with the scoregami almost.
8 to 12.
I
Four
mean,
field goals.
4
So you're
field
not even so Nix doesn't have a touchdown pass through 3 weeks then.
Not until the receivers learn how to catch a ball.
I think it'll be, I'll say I think it'll be another close game. I think the Bucs pull it out. Yeah, I think it'll be another hard fought, game. Maybe just much to what we've been able to see the last handful of weeks. I will say I think that we get not just one touchdown pass, but I think we get 2 touchdown passes from Bo this week. So I think but I think the Bucs win by a touchdown.
What's the score?
I will say 21-14.
Yeah, I'm going to go 31-20 Bucs, but I do believe that Bo's going to have 2 touchdown passes in this game.
So if the Broncos pull this out, I'm taking credit. I'm just throwing that out there because
none of that surprises us.
Jeff says 31-28 Denver.
I'd be thrilled.
Me too. All right. Anything else that we want to cover? Anything else we want to talk about?
No. Thanks to the chat too. Another lively chat with some other names that haven't seen in a while. So that's great.
Yeah. Just don't come up in here talking Buffs anymore. We're not doing that anymore.
Love you, Joey.
Patrick Mahomes. All right. Well, that is going to about do it for us. We appreciate every single person that joined us in the chat. I'll go through some names, not all, because there's been a bunch. Flying Dragon Films, David Burns, Jeff Bryan, Adon, Graham, Joey, Jay was in earlier. Appreciate Robert.
Carter.
Appreciate all you guys for jumping in.
Carter.
Yeah, Carter. Maybe is that it? I don't know if that's it. I'm not going to keep scrolling. Clayton, he was in there. Come on, he was in there. Appreciate all of you for joining us. And make sure you check out all the shows that happen on the network. Not only is it the MHRT network, but we're partnering with the Orange and Blue network. So we have 5 more shows we added on. You've got 3 shows on Tuesday, 3 shows on Wednesday, 1 on Thursday, 1 on Friday.
Counting hard.
Right. And then on game day, it's the pregame show and then the neighborhood and then the postgame show. So make sure you check it all out. We got a whole bunch. Hit that like button and subscribe. We would greatly appreciate it. We love the Broncos. We love Broncos country. We will see you guys later. Peace.
Fast lane when I pass in the street. Bag of money in the passenger seat. Simcoe's been asking for me on the road from the west to the east. Way up, I might never come down, cause the coast's racking up the flame.